We have the technology. We know the solutions. A global agreement is in place. It's now time to use your voice in the fight against the climate crisis. Join us for a journey around the globe as we focus on businesses, leaders, artists, and everyday people who are stepping up, speaking out, and fighting like our world depends on it. Because it does. This is 24 Hours of Reality. You too can be the voice of change, the voice of the future. Let your voice be the voice of reality.
Hi and welcome, I'm Sam Champion. Hour 24, I gotta tell you, this is amazing. Thank you for joining us for 24 Hours of Reality, and I can promise you a very big finish is waiting for you. Be the voice of reality. The signing of the Paris Agreement 2 years ago made it crystal clear. People all over the world understand the urgency of the climate crisis, and our leaders need to stay committed to fighting it. While real progress is being made, more has to be done, and even faster in order to limit the worst effects. We have to find our voice on the climate issue and fight for action. And we've been talking about it now for 24 hours, and I think you've got it. For the past 23 hours, former Vice President of the United States and founder of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore, has led the way around the globe. We've been focusing on the powerful ways activists are speaking up to empower and change entire communities, and shining a light on places where more climate voices actually need to be heard. For the last hour, this last hour, we'll be live from our home base right here in New York City, the Bridge at Cornell Tech, which is one of the most environmentally friendly and energy efficient campuses in the world. It's our perfect home. And for our final hour, that's right, our final hour, we'll hear some of the powerful climate voices here in the United States. Now, please join me in welcoming the Senior Vice President of the Hip Hop Caucus and former Chief Environmental Justice Officer of the EPA, Mustafa Ali, who joins former Vice President Al Gore via satellite from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Sam. Mustafa Ali, thank you so much for joining us by means of satellite. I'm looking forward to our conversation. We've been here, as you might have gathered, for 24 straight hours, and I'm going to give a wrap-up slideshow and closing statement at the end of this hour. We've got an action-packed hour, but this is the last interview I'm doing, and I wanted to do it with you because I respect you, but also because I want to really highlight the environmental justice dimensions of this issue. And you've been involved with environmental justice practically your entire career at a senior position at EPA when the environmental justice movement there was just getting organized and established. I'd worked with John Lewis back when I was in the Senate, and then as VP had an opportunity to see the good work that you did. But I want to start at the beginning. You grew up in coal country in West Virginia, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I definitely did.
So you saw firsthand some of the reality of the problems that low-income families faced with environmental issues have to deal with, correct?
Yeah, you know, everything from mountaintop mining to the pollution that came from that process of some of the waterways, and then, you know, some of the rare diseases that also came, you know, cancers, liver, kidney diseases, all kinds of different things that were a part of the pollution from those extractive processes. And then also the dynamic that began when people started to lose hope because of some of the things that they were facing. And that's why it's so important that we began to move forward away from fossil fuels, but also making sure that we're focusing on a just transition for those who, you know, for decades have been working in those industries and you know, just trying to take care of their families. We've got to provide them with new opportunities. So I've seen it from the beginning.
So one other personal question, just so we can kind of triangulate on you. I know you, and probably a number of people in our audience know you, but for those who don't, one other personal question. You went from this senior position at EPA working on environmental justice to a senior position at the Hip Hop Caucus. And so naturally that stimulates the question, how do you compare and contrast, and how do you continue to pursue this issue that you're so passionate about from those two very different platforms? Maybe I'm wrong, but they sure seem like different platforms to me.
Well, yeah, it's a little different, but the work has always got to be grounded in the community. I was super blessed to grow up as a student in the environmental justice movement and to be mentored and sort of taught from those fantastic early leaders. And the work there at the Environmental Protection Agency around environmental justice was actually grounded in recommendations that came from environmental justice leaders and networks. And then transitioning to the Hip Hop Caucus, for me, just made sense because young people have to play a significant role in the direction that we're going. Culture has to play a significant role. When you have artists and entertainers who begin to share not only their commitment to these issues, but to actually utilize their craft and to make sure that that is reaching the masses, actually reaching around the globe, that's a powerful platform to be at. And then the other component of it is the Respect My Vote campaign, and understanding that our vote has power and that we should make sure that we have individuals who care about our communities, who care about our planet, and then that can translate into real change. So being at the Hip Hop Caucus, being surrounded by so many young and talented individuals just made sense. And it's actually what I call the 21st century paradigm, where culture is a driver. When you look at folks like Beyonce speaking out about climate change when we had the hurricanes that came through Houston, Texas, when you have folks like Vic Mensa, or Chance the Rapper, so many other incredible folks, Antonique Smith, utilizing their gift to be able to, tell the story. That's powerful.
Yeah, well, it actually does make perfect sense. Now, to dig in on the substance of this environmental issue, I'm going to give you my shorthand understanding of this, and I want you to correct me with any tweaks or major changes. So basically, Pope Francis, who I admire so greatly, said in his encyclical that it's always, I'm paraphrasing now, it's always the poor people and the disadvantaged people who get hit the hardest and get hit the first by environmental damages that are done. And that's true whether it's the climate crisis and all of its manifestations, like the hurricane that hit Houston so hard. It's true with mountaintop mining. It's true with waste disposal. And one reason is it just is basic common sense that people with less economic power, less political influence, people of color who may frequently be disadvantaged socially in some majority communities, if you have less of an ability to defend yourself against some of these things that common sense tells you are going to cause problems, then those that have more wealth, more influence, more ability to protect themselves, they're going to be able to move someplace out of the path of the downstream smokestack, away from the hazardous waste site that may seep into the groundwater, away from the floodplain that's going to get subject to repeated flooding when hurricanes come. And as a result, you get these incredible injustices that compound the damages done by the environmental insults. That's basically the issue, or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're spot on there. In many instances, we've created these sacrifice zones. And what happens is, when we talk about environmental justice, when we talk about climate, it's a double whammy for many of these communities. In the Manchester community in Houston, Texas, they are surrounded by petrochemical facilities. You can literally stand on people's back porches and reach out and touch the facility. You can touch the piping in the facility. So, they're getting impacted by the emissions that are coming out on their own personal health. And then, of course, those are warming up the planet. Then the storms come back through because of, the more intense storms that are coming because of climate change. And then they get hit again. And then once those storms are gone, then, the plants start back up. They put more emissions into the community. And then, it's difficult also for folks to be able to recover if they are able to come back, rebuild their homes when the floods come. So there's a double whammy that happens. And that's why it's so important for us to have authentic collaborative partnerships in place where folks understand these injustices that are happening, but also that there is a path forward, that we can win on these issues if we're willing to honor, the voices and the expertise that exist inside of communities, and to match that up with the expertise that exists in other elements of the climate and environmental justice movement.
Well, now, in a self-government that has a commitment to justice and fairness, and that cares about people, you would expect there to be laws passed, regulations put out that would correct for some of these disadvantages. And we've seen that. We did it in the Clinton-Gore administration, that you were where you were in the EPA during that time also. But now, if we have a government that, for whatever reason, cares a lot less about those kinds of things and cares a lot more about absolutely avoiding any kind of difficulty or inconvenience for the people that own the place that's putting out the pollution, then you can't rely on the government, can't rely on the democracy during those years to help you out. What can people do in a situation like that? That's the situation we're in right now, right? So what can people do in that kind of situation?
Well, I think you're seeing, because there's so much egregious behavior that's going on the federal level. And let me say that we should always be holding the federal family accountable for what they're supposed to be doing, protecting public health and the environment. But, there's a number of other things that are going on. Today in Chicago, and I just came from Chicago, you have the Chicago climate agreement that was signed. You had all of these mayors and cities representing millions and millions of people coming together and saying, if, our current administration is going to pull out, we're going to, stay in and we're going to do the right things.
Right.
You have foundations that are beginning to shift their portfolios. So many folks are coming together and saying that if they won't act, we will. And we will make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Right, and that is a very welcome movement. And I was in Germany at the UN meeting last month, and I was there with governors and mayors and business leaders. And, the We're Still In movement, hashtag We Got This, that's extremely important. But what about these environmental problems that people are dealing with every day? I don't know how to ask the question, Mustafa. I know the answer is, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and organize, and get people on your side and try to exercise the power of numbers and exercise some political influence. But what else have you learned about what can work for people, say in Appalachia, who are dealing with the repeal of these regulations that prevent the pollution of their streams and the mountaintop mining going on? What can they do?
Yeah, so there are a number of different things that folks are doing. As I'm traveling around the country, and I've been in about 31, 32 cities in the last about 45, 46 days. So you've got folks who are really pushing hard on the local and the county and the state level, engaging there. You have folks who are also working with academic institutions, making sure that they are having information so that they can have a better understanding of what's going on. You've got folks who are also getting engaged in the political process and are running for office and supporting folks who have their best interest at heart. You also have folks who are starting small businesses around wind and solar and other types of renewables to do their part also. You have things like the HBCU Climate Change Initiative, where you have a number of historically black colleges who are utilizing the power of young people, and they're getting engaged in creating different types of opportunities, partnering with local communities and local organizations. That's happening as well. You have the Divest and Invest movement. That's also a student-led movement where they're pushing their educational institutions to do the right things in this space. And then you also have a number of communities who are also now focusing on revitalizing our most vulnerable communities. The Spartanburg example is a great one where they are linking up and making sure that we are creating jobs, addressing the healthcare issues that are going on, but also in the cleaning up of brownfields and Superfund sites, bringing solar farms into the mix so that they're lowering people's electricity cost, but at the same time also creating new economic opportunities as well. So folks are approaching this issue in a number of different ways and finding out that when they create these collaborative partnerships that are authentic and that where the voice of communities is a driver, then change is happening. And then you have resiliency things that are happening with organizations like Uprose in Brooklyn, New York, and WEAC in Harlem, and a number of other organizations around the country who are identifying the greatest challenges that they're finding, and then they are pulling partners in from faith-based work, from folks in philanthropic and so many other places, and we're finding that even though these larger sort of initiatives on the federal level are not moving forward in the same way, that when you get local, and when you talk about environmental justice issues, or even when you talk about some of the impacts that are happening from climate, that you got to get local with the solutions and make sure that the voices of folks are there are the drivers in that process.
Well, Mustafa, I could talk to you all day. I wish I could. They're telling me we've got to wrap. We're going into the final home stretch here. I just want to close by saying I admire your leadership on environmental justice, your commitment and passion, your stamina, your heart. You've got a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I'm so glad that you're out there working as hard as you are and providing this kind of leadership. Thank you for being a part of 24 Hours of Reality, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
I look forward to that too, and thank you so much for your leadership on these issues over the years.
Thank you.
And we are in the final stretch, so I thought I'd change things up a little bit. I thought I'd come over to the very exciting and youthful social media corner.
Cool area.
The Caleb and
place.
Vanessa. You get everything right here. These are the gentlemen who are completely in touch with you. If you've been talking to us, you've been talking to them. So guys, what have they been saying the last hour?
Well, the social media presence in this broadcast has been unbelievable. I mean, we have been getting posts from all over the world nonstop.
China, Philippines, Korea, Europe, France.
US, Canada.
Everywhere.
Africa. It's been amazing. We've been blown away. And I actually want to introduce you to 3 people, because whenever we're on stage, we have 3 producers that are looking at all of the posts that you've been posting on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And they've been going through all of them, and they've been seeing all of them. And we keep having these conversations about how amazed they are at the watch parties, the selfies, and the messages that you have for promoting good environmental deeds. So thank you guys so much. You guys are unbelievable. Tagboard has been amazing. They're the people behind this amazing technology that allows us to post everything online.
They consolidate every social media network out there, I think, pretty much, and then they let us all be able to see it at once.
They do, and you see how fast we post a selfie and it pops right up there. So we're still looking for tweets and Instagram posts and Facebook posts with hashtag 24 Hours of Reality, because as soon as we're off this broadcast, we are on our phones and we are retweeting, we're favoriting, we're also even following some of you as well.
People all over the world have committed to raising their voices and becoming activists in the fight against the climate crisis. The Climate Reality Project's climate leaders have been personally trained in speaking out by former Vice President Al Gore and some of the world's leading scientists. So let's meet one exceptional young activist from the United States. Here's Haven Coleman.
there's droughts, when there's floods, when there's big giant storms, it hurts people, it kills people. It's not right for people to have to die this way or live in these circumstances. I needed to help the people out there and the kids out there. Sometimes you feel like nobody else is listening, nobody else wants to help. All the pressure's on you. But actually, there's thousands of people fighting for this. Other countries, other citizens. We have to take this into our own hands. Thanks.
Are you ready for today?
Yes.
Are you ready to go talk to the utility board?
Yes.
Awesome. Are you a little nervous?
Yes.
We need to go over what you've written down so far and see if you need to add anything or take any away.
Okay.
I only give you 3 minutes. You got this.
That's it.
Just tell them how you feel. Tell them
What I feel like that they can do for the community. And then hopefully they'll take it into account.
Sayden, what's your favorite part about going and talking to?
I like the adrenaline rush because it's just like you build up all this excitement or you're scared.
your body tells you, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. But when you
Hide, run,
do it,
go somewhere else.
This was the first time that you decided that you wanted to speak to your elected officials. And look how close you were to them, and you didn't seem nervous, but I mean.
I was freaking out, Mom.
Well, you did great.
Panic attack.
Look at all those people that were excited to hear you. Look how eager you were to get to speak. At this town hall, the assistant was picking who could ask a question.
I raised my hand high, and then they ignored me. I stood up, jumping up and down, waving my arms like a chicken, and they still ignored me. Then I climbed up to the front of the room and stared the guy down who was picking.
The assistant who was picking?
Yeah. I stared him down.
That's pretty
I
bold,
stared him
you know?
down until he let me, and then
Bold
he
and
wouldn't look at me
persistent, that's
again.
you.
Yo!
So many facts.
What about this one?
That'll
could
work.
use
I mean,
this.
it's positive. Positive is good
Positive.
when it comes to encouraging the city council. Okay, start rehearsing.
Okay, I'm gonna start rehearsing. Think how much will be invested by 2035.
Maybe describe it to them as you did me, and if you can, not look down at what you.
I'm trying my best.
I know, but if you
It's
can,
hard.
I know it is really stressful.
Us kids are just as much as the.
Remember, you can breathe. If you get tongue-tied, just stop and breathe.
I feel sort of small around adults. Going in front of the utilities board is sort of creepy because they're all staring at you, waiting for you to talk. I'm excited but nervous at the same time.
Coleman, come on down.
First, I wanted to thank you for adding more solar to our city's energy portfolio. Colorado Springs is moving in the right direction, but that makes me so excited. Let's keep moving in the right direction. Cities are leading the way on climate action. Let's be a part of this fast-moving revolution too. I feel passionate about finding creative ways to fix this problem for the kids in our community. Let's work together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hayden. All right.
That went well.
Yes, it did. They were nodding, and I think they were agreeing to everything I said.
I think so too. Let's go get ice cream. You deserve it.
You're helping change the world and changing your community. Become an expert on climate change to surprise adults of your awesomeness. I feel like I have special powers because I can make a whole room go silent. And at school I can't do that, but at a utilities board, I can. So it makes me feel magical.
You are Magical Haven. Okay, over the past several hours, we've had our eyes open to the urgency of the climate crisis and the importance of this movement just in time for all of us to use our voice. This global broadcast couldn't be possible without the tremendous support of our partners all around the world. Now, these organizations, governments, and businesses helped us amplify this message and add new voices calling for climate action right now. Thanks to them, we've been able to bring you this star-studded event to use our voices as if the future depends on it, because it does. And we'd also like to say thank you to our TV and digital distribution partners all around the world.
The climate crisis has hit home with devastating effect, disrupting people's lives and livelihoods everywhere. At the Climate Reality Project, we're empowering people across the planet to become powerful forces for change, fighting for climate solutions at every level of society. We train citizens to become climate reality leaders, dynamic activists who train and work with former U.S. Vice President Al Gore and field-leading experts to mobilize their communities for action. Around the world, our branch offices and local chapters bring climate reality leaders and concerned citizens into the fight for a sustainable future. Like in Brazil, where our activists pushed government leaders to ratify the Paris Agreement in the midst of political turmoil. Or in India, where grassroots efforts helped train 3,000 teachers on the climate crisis. Our 100% Committed campaign gives people a voice in their energy future, encouraging cities like Park City, Utah, and schools like Colorado State University to commit to 100% renewable electricity. And each year, our 24 Hours of Reality broadcast invites millions to join an all-star cast of musicians, celebrities, thought leaders, and more as we direct the world's attention to protecting the planet we all share. Today, as the United States begins a process to withdrawal from the historic Paris Climate Agreement, this work takes on heightened urgency. Now more than ever, we've got to fight like our world depends on it, because it does. Join us as we make our voices heard, as we demand that our leaders take action, and together, we'll make a bright and sustainable future a reality.
This is quickly becoming my favorite hour, and you're about to see why. Our next guest is well known for his role in the CBS drama Madam Secretary, great show, and The Sopranos, another great show. He's also the president of the Creative Coalition. Joining me right now in the studio is the actor and producer, Tim Daly. Tim, very nice to meet you.
So nice
Welcome
to meet
in.
you. Thank you.
We could go on and on with your acting career list. I mean, you know, we just go all the way back to Wings, I guess.
Well, if you get old enough, you know there's a lot there, and you are lucky enough to hang on by your fingernails. So I'm going to keep going as long as I can. Hopefully that list will keep growing.
Well, people know you from this incredible acting career, but you're also very involved in the nonprofit world. You're the president of the Creative Coalition. So tell me a little bit about that organization and its mission.
Well, the Creative Coalition is primarily an arts advocacy organization, and our mission is to protect, promote, and defend the arts in the United States, and particularly arts education. And it's our belief that every person, every child is born with this incredible gift of an imagination and creativity, and that is like a muscle that needs to be exercised. And unfortunately, all too often, that muscle does not continue to get the workout that it needs in school. So it's our mission to make sure that children get arts in school so that their imaginations stay active. And this is not an organization that supports artists necessarily, but we believe that if human beings have an active imagination, they will do things like become more imaginative scientists and engineers that will help us solve the climate crisis. So that is what we do. We also use the power of our membership to shine light on issues of social importance, such as this.
So there are a lot of actors in the world. Some of these celebrities do get involved in activism. Can you tell me why that's important? Why is it important for someone who is in the public eye all the time to actually get out there and take a stand on social issues?
Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I know that in my life I'd reached a point where I had a very successful career, I'd made some money, I had a beautiful family. Everything in my life was wonderful, and I thought that I would be risking getting, some very bad karma if I didn't do something to give back. And when I found the Creative Coalition, I found a place where I felt that I had some expertise and some gravitas because I had been an artist my whole life. So arts advocacy has become my passion.
Now, social media has become a really powerful tool, and it's a way for people to reach out there into communities and to fans. Is it important for celebrities to be in social media right now? And if so, how would you tell them to use it?
Well, I would probably tell a lot of them not to use it because it gets a lot of people in trouble, and I think that you have to be very judicious about how you use it because there's no filter between you and your thumb, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, as we've seen in various areas of our society right now. But I think that for me, if I'm going to use it, it's going to be to simply raise awareness about things that are important to me. And I don't expect anyone to necessarily listen to me more than anyone else, but I think the ratio of people that know what they're talking about and have a measured, intelligent take on what they're trying to say is about the same in any profession, whether you're a politician or an actor or a lawyer or a doctor or a truck driver. So it's, I think, imperative that as you consume social media as a member of the public, that you have some judicious and thoughtful weeding out of things that are not true or not helpful.
And let's kind of bring it into the climate crisis and talking about environment as well. What's the best way to get a message across? You're a major star.
Well,
how do you get these ideas across to people?
This is part of what we do in the Creative Coalition. Besides our mission to keep people's imaginations alive, we also know and understand that if you tell a story about something that is a pressing issue or a crisis like this climate crisis, and can put it into an emotional context, you'll be much more likely to get some traction and to motivate people to take action than if you give them a chart or a graph. I think most people are that way. If we know the stories of the people in Houston and Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and the story of people who have been affected by the climate crisis, I think that it will be a call to action and it will motivate people to become involved as citizens and in groups.
And I guess it's also simply the pure numbers, because when you make a statement, you have so many followers, people who are listening. So you can take a situation like Puerto Rico or like Houston, you can talk about it, and you get a huge audience.
Yes, and I think that in some ways it's a grave responsibility because you know that you might be reaching a lot of people. But in other ways, it's something that is called for, especially in times of crisis. I think that the climate crisis in particular is something like the other big crises that we know about that needs to be attacked from every angle, from the top down, the bottom up, and the sides in. So the more awareness that you can create about what's happening, I think the more activism you'll see and the more people will understand that this is something that is not totally hopeless, something that they can affect, and something that is important for them, their children, and their grandchildren to be involved with.
Now, you've not shied away from getting involved politically as well. Can you tell us about that and how you feel being political can bring about change, really?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a very strange time politically, I think, and the mantra that I keep telling myself right now at this moment, and I would like to tell a lot of my friends, is don't become the thing you hate. Because I feel that a lot of people are getting into a place where no one is listening. And certainly if we listen to each other, it's the only way we're going to solve any of our problems. I think about, speaking of global crises, where we think that mankind is going to come to an end. There's World War II, right? And I remember my parents telling me about my father was in the Navy, so he was fighting in the war. So was his sister, his brother, his other sister. My mother and her family were knitting scarves and saving pieces of aluminum foil. There was a concerted effort from the smallest thing to the largest thing to save the world from this crisis.
You're right.
And I think that if all of us do whatever we can, whether it's saving a piece of tinfoil or recycling a coffee cup, to making political policy, to making corporate policy, we all need to chip in and deal with this. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a crisis that is way worse than it already is.
You just did a light bulb thing for me. I think that's one of the best analogies. That you're right. This country pulled together in that time of war. Everybody was working on solving that problem, and we could certainly do that today.
I think we could. Another example is I did a mini-series years ago called From the Earth to the Moon about the Apollo space program, right? And this was about getting a man on the moon when the entire scientific community of the United States was focused on this one problem. And we had a guy who was our technical advisor, a guy named Dave Scott, who was the guy that drove the little dune buggy on the moon. And he was so interesting to me, that part of the reason I got involved with the Creative Coalition. He said to me, and he was this sort of dry Midwestern guy who had been a fighter pilot, was kind of a heroic guy, and he would say things like, yeah, we were concerned when we realized we were 5 or 6 seconds away from reaching our biological limitations. And I was like, Dave, you mean dying? He's like, yeah, we don't like to say dying. Anyway, he said, I think it's imperative that we send artists to the moon. And I said, why, Dave? And he said, because I know how profound a feeling it was, but I don't know how to express it so that millions of people can understand that profound feeling that I got. He said, I would love it if writers and actors and painters would go and be able to express this thing that I felt.
Hour 24, and you've just done one of the best interviews I've had all day, because I tell you, you've just given me new energy, and I can't imagine what it's meant to the folks who are watching. Tim Daly, thank you very much.
Thank you,
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure and very nice to meet you.
Thank
Although
you very
I've
much.
watched so much of you, I feel like I know you. Let's head back over to Caleb Worthy and see what you've been saying while we've been talking. Caleb?
Welcome back to the final segment of the social media section of 24 Hours of Reality. Now, we kind of wanted to go through the Hall of Fame of some of our
all-stars of the 24.
The all-stars.
Yes.
Some of our favorite posts that we've seen. We have Paris, who just got out of surgery but was up for the entire 24-hour broadcast.
Yes, and my favorite right here is Carol, who actually switched the shirt each time a different country came on to represent. That's awesome. Love that.
We also have a girl named Lily, who hosted her viewing party at her school at a climate change club that she actually created.
Great job, Lily. Seriously.
And we also have my new best friend on Twitter, Bobby. He also happens to be one of Al Gore's biggest fans.
I got to get one of those shirts.
We got to get those shirts for next year.
Definitely.
Now, just because this show is over, that doesn't mean the conversation has to end.
On the contrary, actually, the conversation is just beginning right now with you guys.
We're going to continue this dialogue on social media because we are dedicated to finding solutions to the climate crisis.
Amen. And along the way, there's a lot of people we want to thank. Without them, today would not be possible. So thank you to the Scientific American, GRIST, and EcoWatch.
We also want to thank Tagboard. We want to thank Christine. We want to thank Tyler, Michael, and everyone who made this technology happen.
Yes, and Catherine and Renee and the whole Artemis team, thank you guys so much. And Michael Shames.
Peter Green, and of course, the Climate Reality Project, Kimberlyn, and of course, our fearless leader and our hero, Al Gore. Thank you so much for having us for 24 Hours of Reality, and thank you so much for inspiring this movement.
谢谢大家支持，下次进来。
And now, please join me in welcoming the man whose voice continues to lead the charge in educating and inspiring action in the climate crisis. It is my pleasure, and I mean that from my heart, to introduce the founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, former U.S. Vice President Al Gore.
Sam, thank you for
sir.
Going the distance with us. You're
for
the
an
best.
amazing 24 hours. And people need to know that you are up and moving and running this thing the entire 24 hours.
Well, thank you for making it possible, my friend. Thank you
sir.
so much. So this is the final closing slideshow. It's gonna be a little shorter even than the others, but after it, I'm going to have a closing statement. Before the closing statement, I'm going to thank a lot of people that need to be thanked. But we went all the way around the world in this broadcast to each time zone, and we're back here in the Eastern time zone in the USA. And so we're going to close with a brief summary of the climate crisis as it impacts the United States of America. I want to start, as I have with all of these 24 slideshows, with the planet. What is at stake? And the three questions that are particularly important to address: must we change, can we change, and will we change? On the first question, I always think it's important to make this point about the cost of carbon. We are actually seeing an unbelievable bill for the consequences of the carbon crisis, and we just cannot pay this kind of cost. It's also the number one threat to the global economy, so we have really got to stop this. The answer to the first question, therefore, must we change, is definitely yes. So moving quickly to the second question, can we change? The answer to that is very positive. We've gone through a lot of this. The wind energy capacity is growing just tremendously. The U.S. can now power 26 million homes with wind alone, and the capacity is just growing by leaps and bounds. Solar, it's an even more dramatic story. It really and truly is an exponential curve. It gets cheaper every single month now, and it's really going to take over from fossil fuels, and that's really apparent now. In fact, the U.S. can already power more than 9 million homes, but that's just the beginning. This is just taking off like a rocket ship. One recent example: in May of this year, Arizona's Tucson Electric Power signed a contract for solar electricity at less than 3 cents per kilowatt hour. That's unbelievable. I mean, it's significant because it's so much cheaper than electricity that's generated by burning gas or burning coal. And that's the future. And the jobs are coming in large numbers now. Already 2.6 million jobs in the U.S. In solar and wind and renewable energy. And solar jobs are growing 17 times faster than the average of all other jobs in the economy. Solar jobs are by far the fastest growing jobs in the U.S. Economy. Second fastest growing job is wind turbine technician. There are now twice as many jobs in solar as in coal mining, and when you put the solar jobs and the wind turbine jobs together, the two of them just dwarf any other sector of the economy in fast-growing, good-paying jobs. Now, this is only going to get better with the development of the battery storage market, and sounds complicated. It's really not. If you can use solar at night with the batteries, then that's going to change everything. If the wind's not blowing during the day, you can use the wind electricity generated at night if you got the batteries, and we're now going to have the batteries at an affordable cost. The cumulative storage capacity has been growing. I've been impressed with these numbers, but boy, look at what the projection is in the years ahead. This is really a revolution in the energy market and in the economy generally. Electric cars, General Motors believes the future is all electric. Every automobile manufacturer in the world is shifting to electric cars. Building efficiency, that in the view of some people, that doesn't have the so-called sex appeal, but actually there are lots and lots of jobs, and this saves consumers money, saves homeowners money and business owners money, and it reduces emissions. For these and many other reasons, the use of coal is going down rapidly. The coal plants that have been proposed have been stopped, and many have retired, and other retirements have been announced. We're shifting fairly dramatically to renewable energy. Last year, almost 3/4 of all the new electricity generation was in wind and solar, virtually none of it in coal. And the gas is now losing in head-to-head competitions to solar in many markets, and that's going to completely, that's going to really speed up also. I'm so excited that so many U.S. cities have made a commitment to shift over to 100% renewable energy, and a lot of them have already, well, some of them have already gotten there, including Georgetown, Texas, and many more to come. Hundreds of universities have made that commitment also, and lots of businesses as well. So can we change? You bet we can. Will we change? Yeah, we're going to change. The question is whether we'll change in time to avoid an unacceptable risk of crossing some kind of dangerous tipping point beyond which we could lose control of this. I'm very optimistic. We can change. We're going to win this. And the Paris Agreement 2 years ago set the direction of travel. Every country in the world, Trump can't even legally pull out until the day after the next presidential election in 2020. And in the meantime, California, New York, and Washington, and Oregon, and a whole bunch of other states. I think I may have a list of them here, but some of the investment experts and market experts are saying the U.S. is going to meet its commitments regardless of what the White House does. And here's this list I thought I had: Washington, New York, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, all these others, and hundreds of cities, 455 cities, 325 colleges and universities, 1,747 businesses and investment firms, all committed to stay in the Paris Agreement. And that's why the experts are saying we're on track not only to meet the commitments at Paris, but to exceed them. And the public support at the grassroots level. This was a big march surrounding the White House. I used to work in the White House. I never thought that I would be marching on the White House, but I'm in the lower right-hand corner there with my daughter and granddaughter, and I was proud to be there. And this grassroots activism is extremely important. And so what you have seen and heard here is designed to convince you to join all those who are using their voices to fight the climate crisis. Use your voice as a voice of reality. Fight like your world depends on it, because your world really does depend on it. And that is what this 24 hours of reality has been all about. And as we prepare to bring this year's 24 hours of reality to a close, I'd like to take a moment to express heartfelt thanks for the unbelievably skilled and dedicated men and women involved in making this whole effort such a success. Our hosts, Sam Champion, Sarah Backhouse, Vanessa Hauk, Jonathan Scott, Jamil Smith, Ying Chen, Namrata Brar, Helen Hunt, our social media ringmaster, Callum Worthy. I gave him a trophy last year. He deserves another one this year. All of our amazing musicians, Ryan Tedder and Bryn Cutzel from One Republic, Mariah Carey, Annie Lennox, Sheryl Crow, Peter Garrett and Midnight Oil, Ellie Goulding, Jason Mraz, Shawn Mendes, Nile Rodgers and Chic, Iggy Pop, The Killers, The Hives, Jean-Michel Jarre, Belinda Carlisle, Mana Jim, Jay Park, Billy Bragg, Rag and Bone, Man, Sean, Shai Ben Sur and the Rajasthan Express, Ali Simpson, Spencer Ludwig, Young Paris, Menzie, Eric Nam, Faye Reds, Now United, Levi Hummon, Sandro, Cavaza, Christy Altamare, Tall Heights, a beautiful performance just now, and our special guests, including Vanessa Wu, Taya Leone, Nicholas Koster, Waldau, Shailene Woodley, Ed Begley Jr., Tim Daly just now, Richard Branson, Governor Jerry Brown, Governor Kate Brown, Mayor Carmen Cruz, Mayor Gregor Robertson, Mayor Hannah Gronke Witzwaltz, Mayor Eshok Shridharan, Mayor Sali Misamanga, Senator Sylvia Garza, Senator Lauren Lagarda from the Philippines, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand, Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, President Michelle Bachelet of Chile, Mustafa Ali, and Patricia Espinosa from the United Nations, and our fantastic executive producers, Peter Green and Michael Shames, Stephen Adair, Daniel Adair, and the entire crew at Shoulder Hill Productions. They're the best in the business. And Ken Berlin, the president and CEO of the Climate Reality Project, and the entire Climate Reality staff. And of course, Beth Gear and my Nashville team. And if I may say, what a success this entire effort has been. Here are the numbers. This year, 24 Hours of Reality reached more than 500 million households in more than 100 countries. That's on broadcast television, 500 million households around the world. Climate Reality supporters and partners used their voices online and, using today's technology, broadcast the show through their Facebook feeds, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch accounts. And together, you all have helped to make 24 Hours of Reality the #1 top trending video on YouTube, on Facebook Live, with more than 32 million people from some 200 nations going online to watch, over and above that massive audience on broadcast television. So thank you all. Now, I've got a few closing words to say. For decades now, scientists have been warning all of us in the world that if we continued to recklessly pollute the atmosphere, we would bear the consequences of our actions. Stronger storms, bigger floods, more devastating droughts, more destructive and widespread fires, melting ice and rising seas, tropical diseases migrating to higher latitudes, massive waves of climate refugees, many of them heartbroken, and the political disruption and enhanced risk of civil wars in some regions. We've seen that in Syria. And as we've seen, these consequences are now already visible around the world. And by the way, in the last 24 hours, just since our show began, 2 major fires broke out in California while we were getting warmed up at the beginning of the program. And within 24 hours, they have spread rapidly and consumed over 56,000 acres, resulting in the evacuation of 30,000 people in Southern California. And you know, events like this are now reported daily on the news with a terrifying drumbeat of regularity, a so-called new normal. But it's not normal at all, and we have to speak up and act. Because over the last 24 hours, we've also seen another kind of action. We have heard the voices of people from around the world who are taking action to solve the climate crisis. We have seen how activists, businesses, local leaders, students, and individuals are making amazing progress in their communities, a progress toward a healthy, clean energy future. We have even heard from visionary governors, a prime minister, and a president, all of whom are offering leadership in our time of urgency. As of today, every single nation in the world is legally committed to the historic Paris Agreement to limit carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And while the current United States leadership threatens to isolate itself from the world by pulling out, it cannot stop the momentum that is fueling progress. As we've seen market forces and technological developments continue to drive down the price of renewable energy, electric vehicles, batteries, and hundreds of efficiency improvements that are reducing energy demand, numerous and great jobs are being created in the clean energy economy. Cities, states, local leaders, and businesses are taking the lead on reducing emissions, and passionate individuals everywhere are making a tremendous difference. People just like you who are finding their voice on the climate issue and demanding and creating change. So thank you from the bottom of my heart to all who watched, all who shared, all who have taken and are taking action, all who have committed to be a voice of reality, to advocate for urgent solutions to the climate crisis. We must continue this momentum. It is our duty to act, to hasten the progress and the transition to a world powered by clean and sustainable energy, a prosperous and fair world. Every one of us can and must do our part. Every one of us can and must fight like our world depends on it, because it does depend on it. And when we do, we will prevail. We will solve the climate crisis. Thank you and good night.